PPE stuff is way deeper than we thought. I mean, not that we thought, than we'd seen, right? We all knew that it went kind of deep. We all knew that the Tory corruption was going to go like 5 different layers deep into the iceberg, but because Michelle Mone is so kind of pissed off in the way that she's been kind of left out in the cold by Conservative ministers, she's trying to actually bring the Conservative ministers down with her. I think I have it in my bookmark somewhere. So this is a tweet that Michelle Mone put out herself. Saying, Michael Gove told the media earlier today that he hopes justice can be served. I agree with Michael. Let's take a look at his record on PPE deals during the pandemic. So she's trying to essentially dob in all of the ministers who are responsible. So she's gone after Michael Gove with this little thing that she's put out here. So she's also been beefing with Lord Bethel, who was somebody who was in the Department for Health and Social Care during the pandemic. And the stuff with Lord Bethel is absolutely wild. But we'll start off with her Michael Gove stuff to begin with. Let's have a look and see what she's got to say here.
Known MP Michael Gove and his Conservative Party donor friend David Mellor CBE, owner of Mellor Designs. Mellor backed Gove's failed leadership battle attempt in 2016 and at the time was his campaign chair of finance. Mellor Designs via the VIP lane was awarded 6 PPE contracts worth £164 million. The disclosure by the government states that the Duchy of Lancaster made the referral. At the time, and
it's worth pointing out as well, this has already been brought out too. Marina Purkis was talking about this on Jeremy Vine. The councils were trying to recommend the lines that they already had, and NHS Trusts were doing this too. They're already trying to make it aware to government ministers that they already had links for people who already provide them with some PPE. And like they could quickly tender these things to be able to bring in the PPE, and the government still used the VIP lane. It was literally only ever existed to funnel money into their mates' pockets.
Contracts were awarded. Gove was head of the Cabinet Office, responsible for government procurement and in charge of the office of the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. To show further how connected David Mellor was, on the 6th of April 2020 he called Lord Bethel, Health Minister who oversaw the awarding of PPE contracts, and said that he was disappointed with the speed at which his £65 million contract for face masks was being awarded. Lord Bethel recommended that the delays should be dealt with urgently. Also on the same call was Lord Bethel's unpaid advisor Lord Feldman, who we have already heard about in relation to SG recruitment. Mellor Designs made more than £13 million profit after tax in 2020 as a result of the PPE pandemic. The year before, it made just £144,000.
It's also worth pointing out, so there's plenty of other stories of this. There was one other one in my bookmarks as well that I'd picked up too, which was the awarding of a contract to another group which had only ever done like corporate finance stuff and just magically turned into a PPE company as soon as they realised the government was looking for VIP lanes for procurement and things like that. And literally, she's even tweeting out directly at Michael Gove, I have admitted my mistakes. Michael Gove and Sir Chris Wormold also to be able to account, not least for the waste in PPE that they oversaw, right? Because it's not just Michelle Mone. I know she's like the big villain here and she's obviously awful, right? She's obviously awful. But it all comes back to the Tories at the end of the day. It all comes back to Michael Gove and it all comes back to Lord Bethel. The really funny bit though, right? If you look here, because she's been beefing pretty hard with Lord Bethel. And so when talking about Rishi Sunak and essentially admitting in the interview that everybody in the government knew she had links to PPE MedPro, so all of the stuff that she said previously about not being linked and the government backing her up on that, essentially not just shows her to be a craven liar, because she is a craven liar and so is her husband and all the hangers-on, they're all filthy fucking liars, right? But crucially, the government also denied knowing of this when she is explicitly calling them out as knowing what was happening here. So Lord Bethel has then come back and said that she wasn't honest about her financial interests to him. She didn't explain that she had financial involvement with PPE MedPro. And he brings up this text talking about PPE MedPro with regards to Michelle and what she'd said to him. And this text message is from the 4th of October 2020. And here is a little bit of context that's been added by the community notes that she points out in her quote tweet. Lord Bethel had previously had a government lawyer issue a witness statement. He had lost his phone in early 2021 and lost all access to SMS and WhatsApp messages prior to that date. The iMessage he has posted is dated from 2020. If he'd lost his phone in 2021, how is he bringing up a text message from that date, in 2020, a year before, regarding Michelle Mone to try and call them out. And she even mentions it. You seem to have mysteriously discovered access to your text messages from 2020. Now you've found them. Will you be sending them to the COVID inquiry? Which is wild, right? In that she's actually looking at essentially trying to take the Tories with her. And, fair play to her, right? Burn it all down. It's essentially what Boris Johnson, Nadine Dorries, all of these types have been doing. Nadine Dorries has been talking about, like, the internal corruption in the Conservative Party and the people who control the levers of power. Like, she's been talking about Dougie Smith on TikTok, for example. And it just shows that these people are just there for their own kind of material interests, right? They joined the Conservative Party thinking it would be a vehicle to advance themselves, and then they get rebuked by the Conservative establishment or whatever it is. They get thrown by the wayside because they're no longer politically useful, and suddenly they're throwing each other into the sea, right? Throwing each other out of the pram with all of the rest of the toys that have been ejected, and they fight like rats in a sack every time. It's honestly, it's this weird psychodrama that just continues every single day, just continually fighting amongst each other. I love it. You love to see it. And this could potentially be contempt of court, right? There's like official government inquiries, and Bethel has had his own lawyers draft statements saying that he didn't have these messages. Here he is posting it on Twitter, just in court in 4K. And whilst Michelle Mone, you can say all the bad things you want about her, and you should say bad things about her because she's a bad person. But like, at the end of the day, if you're just a rich person running around and somebody from the government offers you, here's your chance to make loads of free money, essentially, for no reason, because we've decided that we're going to implement deliberate corruption, even though our own civil servants are telling us not to, right? Of course you're going to take that offer, but it's really the government and the corruption that you really should be taking issue with here. And this is why so many people on the right expect you to try and demonize civil servants. They're the waste of money, or they're always on strike, or they're too lazy, they want 4-day work weeks, whatever it is. They're working from home. The civil servants are the ones undermining democracy by getting in the way. That's why they're doing it, because they know the civil servants have the dirt. And they want to essentially want to undermine anything they might say. They want to undermine everything that they might potentially say, so that when these stories do come out, you don't believe them. But of course, that's not really working anymore, because everyone's seen the Michelle Mone stuff. It's the most, people absolutely despise. She's the most hated woman in the country, really and truly. Yeah, Ianda Capital was one I was looking at before. Yeah, they got 252 million to deliver masks. A hedge fund with no record in PPE procurement, given a red rating, major concerns, and it delivered zero usable masks for £252 million. £252 million. Dan Hodges is doing all very well and good with the if the government had regulated this, it would have been taken longer during the pandemic. It takes longer when you have to buy it again, you prat. And it also takes longer when you have to go to a company who hasn't got a clue what they're doing because they've never actually procured PPE before, because they're a hedge fund who's just been invited into the fold by government ministers, right? Because they know people, if they're Matt Hancock's mate down the pub, etc., right? Do you see what I mean? And we already had these the links there available to kind of tender these kind of contracts already through NHS trusts, through who people knew in the civil service, all of these different links that we had pre-pandemic. And we were already told, Sam Bright was talking about this before as well, that we already had warnings in 2019 of their potentials for shortages of PPE. And on top of that, Lord Bethel himself had 27 meetings held by firms handed £1.14 billion in government contracts were hidden from public scrutiny for 14 months. They know exactly how dirty the inside is, and they've been trying to keep it secret. They continually try and keep it secret. It's so obvious, right? And again, why wouldn't Michelle Mone want to at least have the ire put on somebody else other than her? When everybody is to blame, it's in a whole network, a web of corruption, an intractable web of corruption from the most, for again, what me and Kev talk about all the time. This party that doesn't have any interest in the role of governance. They don't have any interest in being a governing party and doing that role. They contract out to management consultants, people they know from the industry, to get them to tell them what to do. And turns out they tell them to give all their money to their mates. It's hardly a difficult philosophy to be able to kind of wrap your head around, right? Here's Sky News talking about the potential for more political damage. Let's have a listen.
Tomorrow we'll be talking a lot about what this means for Baroness Mone, her reputation. Is it damaging for the government as well?
I think it is. Look, she's the face of it, that self-pitying interview. People have compared it to Prince Andrew trying to defend himself. But I think, yes, the blame is going more widely, not least because she seems determined to drag ministers into it by tweeting Michael Gove and Rishi Sunak today, saying they knew all along, by pointing out that there were thousands of COVID contracts, and she thinks that lots of them were pretty chaotic. Now, this is already an issue which I think a lot of voters continue to be more angry about than politicians perhaps realise. I was talking to some Labour people today. They mention it a lot. They come up with a figure of 7 billion for all the COVID fraud, including the business loans and everything else. And they say it's mentioned a lot by voters in their focus groups. Rachel Reeves has said that if Labour get into...
Oh, it's mentioned everywhere on Twitter. Like, you should look at Twitter. Michelle Mone, even when this wasn't like an ongoing scandal at the time, she was always trending. It was always the same thing circling around, like, where's the money, Michelle Mone? Where's the money, right? The hashtag GTTO crowd were all over that. And so they should be, right? I have my issues with the GTTO crowd, right? But, you know, it was reasonable to be absolutely furious about this. Absolutely furious of taxpayers' money, public money, just being doled out to mates for no reason under the auspices of saving the country. And as Helza points out in chat, people died. It was substandard. We had the people who we were clapping in our evenings, banging pots and pans together outside of our houses, saying thank you medical staff, and they were wearing bin bags because the PPE that was supposed to be provided to them by these absolute scumbags, these absolutely vile individuals, was completely substandard and completely unusable because it wasn't there for any kind of purpose other than to be able to shovel public money into the pockets of rich people under the auspices of dealing with the pandemic. It's sickening. And everyone should be absolutely furious, right? I know I've not covered it much on my channel. You get a lot of coverage here, but I think it's just worth talking about. Again, and it's not just Michelle Mone. It's not just a corporatocracy, it's also a kleptocracy as well. It's oligopoly. The reason why Conservatives get into government is to take government money and give it to their friends. That's it. That's all it's been. Even when the privatisations, etc., that they try and do, they never do it because it's the good of the public. They never actually have a reason for it other than Thatcher said privatisation good, so let's do more of it. And then, of course, who gets the contract tendered to them? It's their mates in the private sector, people who donate to them. They do it every single time.
Fucking neoliberalism.
Monkey Nuts with the membership, welcome back to the stream, and Massive Games with the Prime sub, thank you. Yet New Labour will not go after them for their money back. I mean, to be fair, London, she said, Rachel Reeves had it in her speech at the Labour conference that they're going to be going after every single penny of COVID fraud. But, you know, there's one of the things I would trust them to do because it's just like such a win-win. We all know that malfeasance was going on. We all know that it was corrupt as hell. We all know that these people would take basically any opportunity that they could get to try and funnel huge amounts of state money into the pockets of people that they know in the private sector, right? And so it's super easy for Labour to come in and go, we've now got our hands on the books. Oh, and the Tories have cooked it. The Tories are untrustworthy. You can never vote for them ever again, ever. And it's the kind of thing that once they go through all the books and they realise just how corrupt it's all been and all the information that they have from the back deal from the DHSC, right? They'll be able to go through and say, look at all this stuff that we found, right? They'll have their own version of the Liam Byrne letter from 2010. And say, look at this, look at all this information we have of just how corrupt these people are. You can never vote for them again. And it's so, like, the floor is so high on what you get out from trying to go after this stuff when Labour do eventually come into government. Yeah, that I genuinely will do 100% trust them to fully go after all of these kind of things. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.